levy. If you don't agree with it, you can vote no. What does it mean if you vote no? That means that the town board, I don't want to say it goes back to the drawing board, but has to go back and do more homework on what is the budget for 2024 going to look like. There would be another public hearing, and hopefully the budget would be adopted at that point in time. So with that, I will be quiet, hopefully, for the next hour.
Okay, folks, Laura's going to be the timer over there. Who would like to go first?
The lady had a question there.
Stand up,
I
state.
was up and down Tamarack Road.
Oh, you got to stand up, state your name, please, and your address.
Karen Hamlet. Today I was up and down Tamarack Road several times. They just tore down the last of Marsh's farm. What happens to their stuff? I mean, they don't have any property there. I mean, they don't have any buildings there anymore. Did you guys know that they were tearing that down?
Well, I honestly certainly didn't know they were tearing that house down.
They just brought it in this morning, tore the rest of it all down.
But
They
that's
still
rude.
have trucks out there.
But
and
what is your
equipment.
question? What is your question? As far
What's
as-
that gonna do to our taxes if they don't have any buildings there?
Go ahead.
So tax bills are based off of the equalized value of the town as of January 1st, every single year. So even though we're talking about, if you read the resolution, it says 2023 taxes to be paid in 2024, the equalized value of the community has already been set, and any work that happens after that does not get caught until the next year. So 2025's budget would adjust the equalized value, whether there's improvements or potentially removals of improved value at that point.
Thank you. Next.
I have a question, Sean Tamarack. So you're looking for $250,000 for next year for road repairs and upkeep, maintenance, whatever. Can you expand on the size and scope of what it is you would like to do next year? Which roads do you want to do? How much of those roads do you want to do? How much work is involved in the plan?
Ooh, sorry. Hopefully you can see that from across the room. One of the things that the Highway Committee has done over the course of the last 6 months is to come up with a scope, obviously dependent on budgeting. So if we do not receive $250,000 worth of funding, this plan doesn't really mean anything because we would have to reshuffle, right? If we were to receive $250,000 of funding, again, this is using that Whistler budgeting tool. You can see at the top, this is year 2024. We would go through and hopefully be able to complete all of those projects. The majority of them are going to be a combination of chip sealing and slag sealing along with some patchwork and then that seal work over the top of it. What we're goal for the roads would be is to save the roads that we can and then prolong any additional maintenance at some point in the future. As we get into year 2027 and 2028, you obviously see that is where that chart of that $700,000 backlog of work comes into play, is we don't have the annual funding to be able to come up with the cash to flip-flop projects. So it really depends not only on this year's budget, but the years after that as far as what that road plan looks like. Generally speaking, in the past years, the town has revisited the 3 to 5 year road outlook every single spring or late winter, depending on how you want to look at it, to say, okay, you know, pick a road. Did Marsh Road end up getting cracked up over the winter more than we thought? Do we have to address it sooner than we thought, or is it still in okay shape and we can look at it potentially next year? So it really is a living document, and it's based on funding, and it's based on what happens the year before and what's been done.
You're looking at Tamarack Road, taking it all the way from the village to Young Road.
So just quickly clarify, these are the segments that are defined through the road ratings, okay? So this segment, Tamarack Road, from 8th Street and 4th Street towards Young Road is how they look at it. The two segments are 7,814. Those are the two segments that were paved in, I believe, 2013 and 2014. And this $4,000 segment up front is the first section you get to right as you get out of town. Yep.
Great, next person.
Okay, next person that has a question? Come on, there's a lot of people, somebody else must have a question. Go ahead.
Roger and Gale Street, West 157, Spring Lake.
Roger and Gelson.
Good. Josh, you had mentioned on a previous slide, South Shore Drive, and that didn't
Might
come
want to hang
up.
on just a second.
Okay, try it again.
So you mentioned South Shore Drive in an earlier slide, but that didn't come up. Now I saw North Blue Spring Lake Drive there. Just curious about what happened to South Shore. I have a couple other questions too, while he's looking for that.
So year 2 is where we've got South Shore Drive included.
Okay.
Go ahead to the next question.
Tornado damage, does the town carry insurance for that, like homeowners do, or that's just on the backs of the municipality?
I've actually, somebody else asked me that, and put a call in or an email in the insurance company about that. Like 2 days ago, so.
Okay.
I know, like our homeowners, but it's an act, God or whatever, so.
But we are looking into that.
Good, yeah, I just curious, didn't know. And then, Josh, one of your last slides talked about the debt service, and you listed $1 million as being an amount that we would want to borrow over 20 years. Why are we not just borrowing the $250 that we're requesting this year?
So
maybe I missed that.
What we started with is that target of $74,000 of debt service that we're going to retire in 2023. And I'm not going to say as a pot shot, but as a dart at the wall, we asked for amortization schedules for 3 different things: $250 for 5, $500 for 10, and $1 million for 20. Trying to figure out what would that schedule actually look like. Okay, we're not saying that we have to borrow $1 million. We're not saying we have to borrow 500 or even 250. Those are just in the research that we were doing to try to figure out what can we fill with what voids.
So there is a possibility that we could just borrow $250.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or none, depending on what happens with the tax levy.
Right.
Borrowing costs more.
Well, the cheapest way to do it is what we're presenting here, because otherwise we're gonna have to pay interest.
Pay as you go.
Pay as you go.
We had a question over here.
Jean Beck, and Substack, we're talking about H1. So I have a couple of questions. Would you confirm, and this doesn't necessarily have to do with the budget directly, but I have heard that there's a plan to reassess property values in the town either in 2024 or 2025.
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, we can.
She's asking if there's a plan to reassess the properties in 2024 or 2025.
Good question.
So here's your tax bill again. If you look at the top, this assessment ratio is a statutory requirement of communities. You have to keep it within the confines of 100% plus or minus, depending on the amount of years and the percentage that you're away. We have gotten first notice from our assessor, potentially the second notice, or?
I haven't got that yet.
Okay.
First.
During border review this year, they advised the town board members that were on border review that we should start to consider a revaluation, whether that be a full in and out, a walk around, or potentially just a market update. Okay? Whether that's 2024, not in the budget, but potentially 2025 or 2026. I'm assuming I know where your question is going to go next, which is what does that mean if my property value increases by 15% 2 years from now? Okay, back to the mill rate. Tax levy is the expense needed for the town to continue operations, and the value goes into that equation. So if your property goes up equally amongst everyone else and the town board doesn't spend any additional money, that mill rate stays the same. Because we're not spending more money, we've got more value, the mill rate goes down, but you still have to pay the same amount, $400 to the town, if the expenses don't go up. If your property, let's say you put an addition on your house, double the size of your house, that revaluation would catch the fact that, whoop, your ranch house went from 2,000 square feet to 4,000 square feet, and now it's worth more than what your neighbor's is or used to be because it's now twice the size. Or you did a bathroom remodel or whatever you might do. Your revaluation really comes down to three things. Number one, what did they use as a comparable? Number two, how recent were the sales? And number three, what is your change compared to everybody else in town? Okay, the community that I work in just had a full revaluation, and they went up on average by 53%, okay? But that pot of money got bigger and the expenses stayed the same. If you were above or below that average is where your tax bill specifically would see either an increase or a decrease. So a revaluation gets the market value up to what the assessors say the market value is, but if you increase equal, so to speak, with everybody else in the community, your portion, your small little sliver of the tax to the town of Palmyra doesn't necessarily change, as long as expenses don't go up. If we were to increase, by that point, it's not going to be us, or it could be some of us. If the expenses were to double, your tax bill would double. Even if we were to do that now, and we were to say, look, we want to go from $1 million to $2 million, your tax bill would go from $400 to $800, pretty much right off the bat. I don't want to say it has nothing to do with your property value, but it has more to do with your sliver compared to everyone else's sliver within the town.
And Josh, can you explain this? It is not a town board decision necessarily. There's a process that the state goes through to determine when you have to be revalued. Can you just explain to everybody what that process is?
Yeah, essentially the town gets notice that says, hey, your valuation of your community is out of compliance, you need to do a revaluation. And if you ignore it long enough, they will hire someone and have the state come in and bill you for it as the community, and you still get revalued. You can't run away from the Department of Revenue, unfortunately. Death and taxes, right?
Any more?
Wait, I wasn't finished.
Oh,
Okay, so, I'm just gonna make a comment and say, historically, we know when there's money available to spend, it usually gets spent. So if the property values go up, there are very few government entities that ever go, oh, we're not gonna touch that. So just buyer beware that it's very unlikely in government that you're not gonna wanna spend that money if the property values increase. As far as another question, so when you were looking at the percent, the budget is proposed to increase with the $250,000, what you said was 65.706%, or 35% of the total for each parcel, depending on what factors apply to you. That also is taking into consideration, this might only be 65% of the town, but all those other entities can also increase. That we need to consider as taxpayers when you're voting yes or no to increase this. Okay, so I just want to ask you to clarify again. So if the vote is yes tonight to exceed the levy for $250,000, that applies only to 2024, and if it does not roll over to 2025 or future years, we would have to come back here again, and you would have to request again for us to vote favorably to have a 2025 increase?
If we were asking for it to go up again. But it is, once it's in place, if we vote yes, Once it's in place, that carries forward. If again, we wanted to increase the levy next year, we would have to come back and ask for that.
Okay, so let me so the clarifying question is, so it is 250,000, it would begin in 2024, and it would be every year thereafter, and to go above that, you would have to ask more?
No, that's not what
Okay.
I'm saying. The tax levy.
Can you stand up and talk louder?
Sure. The tax levy, jump in here if I'm saying something incorrect. The question was on the tax levy. If it's approved tonight, that tax levy mill rate would continue on. Okay. If we wanted to go above the 250, or then we would have to come back next year for it.
So I guess what I'm getting at is, it would be then $250,000 in 2024 that our budget would increase, and that same thing would carry over to 2025?
No.
No, there's two different,
I'm not saying another 250,000 increase above the 250, I'm saying it would perpetually be 250
no.
above, no, okay.
So going back, and I'm gonna try to find this, okay? Two different things. Tax levy, the amount of revenue that's being collected from the town. Tax levy limit. So what we're requesting is to exceed the limit, okay? Additionally, we're also requesting to adopt the levy, which this year is the same. Again, the town residents have the ability every single year to approve the levy, right? So if we were to come back next year and say, hey, we want to continue with $250,000, and you came to us, or you came to us as a majority and said, your project, your plan, it sucked, we don't want to do it anymore, right? That levy limit is still the limit. The levy goes up and down underneath it annually, depending on what the vote is for the tax levy. So there's two different questions at the special electors meeting. Exceed the levy limit, that carries, okay? The levy itself is an annual process that everybody has the say in, yes or no.
Okay, so then the answer to the question is the 250,000 that you're asking for 2024 also going to be on 2025, the total budget is yes?
It could be presented that way, yes.
Well, what do you mean it could be? It either is or it isn't. Is it, in 2025, when the budget comes out, we're not asking to exceed it because we already did in 2024, but we will have that excess that we didn't have in 2023 will be in 2024, 2025, 2026, 2027, and on and on. Okay, thank you.
Again, the vote to adopt the actual levy, right? How much tax are we collecting? That is a vote that happens every single year. Okay, so this year sets that levy limit, and it would continue. The limit of what we could raise taxes to, the levy itself, the amount of cash that is collected through property taxes is an annual and variable proposition that folks have a chance to weigh in on. We would not, let's say we're all still here next year, okay? Let's say everybody tonight passes the levy exceedance, so we get the additional funding in 2024. We would not have to come back in 2025 to ask to exceed the levy. We wouldn't have to.
Because it's already been exceeded.
It's been exceeded, but along with that is the budget. How much revenue and expense, right? If we get additional state revenues, let's say in 2025, the legislature does the same thing they did this year, and we see an additional $50,000 worth of state shared revenue, we could lower the general property tax levy for our local constituents by that same 50 grand. That would be proposed. Okay, I just.
Specifically, I don't think that ever happens or rarely, so. So,
Exactly.
I would bet my life on it.
Okay, somebody's got their hand up. Stand up, please, and identify yourself.
Connie Wilson. I noticed looking at your figures there that you did base a lot of the numbers on 2023 taxes and not 2024 taxes. And I think someone else may have something to say about what it really is going to cost per 100,000.
Connie, could you speak up, please?
Okay. I said, I noticed that on your projections there, they were based on 2023 taxes, not on what 2024 taxes are gonna be. Like your $67 on 2024 taxes, that's actually more like $99 per 100,000 is what it'll increase to. If you compared it to what the 2024 taxes are gonna be, but you based them on 2023, our current taxes. The other thing is that, I know what Jean Ann was asking, is if you're asking for $250,000 this year, are you going to ask for, I know you talked at your budget meetings, $300,000 the next year, $400,000 the next year, and the next year? Is that still in your plans?
Those were the 4 slides you saw with the road ratings and the different levels.
Right.
They were all examples to emphasize what the end backlog could be. The one for 353 all year, every year for 5 years, showed a 0 backlog, as an example only.
Okay, I guess what I'm asking, just so people can understand it a little better, if you're asking for $250 this year, are you going to ask for more next year? And next year, in order to...
We don't know at this point.
Right now, we're concentrating on this year.
I think what-
250,000,
Right.
okay? We don't know what next year's gonna bring in.
Okay.
It's a long
If they
time
do-
off.
If they do vote to increase the levy this year, that levy stays next year unless we get people to come back together and say, hey, we want to lower it, or.
Well, we do have to get back together
But it'll
next year.
stay that same level.
But there's 2 votes, remember? You have to vote to approve the budget.
Right.
And so if we have 250 in there next year, and you don't approve the budget because you don't want us to spend another 250, that's every one of us right to vote no at next year. So the 250, yes, it's probably intended to be there, but you have a vote whether we, let's say we don't increase the levy next year, or we don't go for a tax levy increase, and we have 250,000 in the budget for roads next year, and you vote not to accept the budget, you're sending us a message that we have to reduce things.
Okay. But if
So
they
you do still have a say on what the budget is next year for roads or any of the categories.
One just final thing, I looked at your expense sheet, and I know this is minor, but I hope it's not an example of what to expect. The mileage and reimbursement, last year it was $234 for mileage and reimbursement for going to like meetings and things. This year it's over $1,200, so that's 5 times.
When you say 20, last year, you mean 2022?
2022.
Okay, all right.
It was $234. This year so far now, it's been over $1,200, so that's 5 times what was spent last time. So that's something that you could be watching on.
We absolutely are. The
some of
reason it was
spending.
up this year is because you have 3 new board members that had to get some initial training
Right.
on being board members. So that's why it was up this year.
Well, that kind of brings that if you had stuck with 5-member board, then that means you could have a couple people carrying over to help train you, so you wouldn't have to go to these.
Well, that wouldn't be the case because then we'd have the additional 2 new ones next year that would need training. That wouldn't impact us coming to this year. But the reason we didn't is because of the budget and needing, it increased our budget for this year. But if you'd like to talk about the 5-person board, we're glad to talk about it on the next board
Experienced
meeting.
people here, they don't need to go to the new meetings again. They already been there, is what I'm saying.
Excuse
The other
me?
thing, though, is that,
What?
you'll-
3 minutes, Laura says 3 minutes are up.
And Bonnie, you'll have an opportunity, once everybody else is done, if you want to talk again, you'll have an
Okay,
opportunity.
thank you.
Any more new folks to, go ahead.
A year ago, the previous.
Can you introduce yourself and your address?
Kathy Olson, W1360 Highway 106, Palmyra.
Thank you.
A year ago, the previous town board recommended a 47% tax increase for fire and EMS contract. You 3 spoke against the tax increase, and it was voted down. The former board then reconvened and made adjustments to the balance of the 2023 budget within the state-imposed levy limit. This spring, you became the new town board. And now you are asking for a 65.5% tax increase, an increase of $99 for every $100,000 of a based on the 2024 tax rate. So if your property is assessed at $300,000, your taxes will increase by $297 on top of what your current taxes will be. Since taking office in April, you have gone on a spending spree that has exceeded the balanced budget by $143,550, creating the likelihood that our town will end the year in the red for the first time ever. It would be wise for you to work within the state imposed levy limit for 2024 instead of raising our taxes for more excessive spending.
Would you like to explain the 43% thing with the 65 now?
I do want to make one point,
Yes.
Ms. Olson. I did actually vote for the levy increase last year. I was one of the 17 people.
You
I know
spoke
it.
against it.
No, I spoke against a number of clerical errors that were presented in the budget to find out information. I know it was a secret ballot, and you probably don't trust my word any farther than you can see me. But I will guarantee you that myself and the Pearson family, who sat back in the corner of that room, voted to approve the levy exceedance. Guaranteed, cross my heart, hope to die. Okay, just for clarification.
One other question, is that $250,000 increase included in the amount you have on the proposed budget, in the levy amount that you have on the proposed budget?
Yes.
So if we vote for the proposed budget, we're voting for the levy increase.
The levy increase comes prior to the levy adoption. So it's exceedance first, then levy adoption. So you would have a vote to say no to the exceedance before you would have to say yes or no to the actual levy itself.
It looks like we have to say no to both. Because the state imposed levy limit was how much?
Do you have the worksheet?
I think it was like 107,000, just hold on.
Oh, while you're looking for that, just one comment on your when you mentioned that the current town board went on a spending spree
Yeah.
of 147. If you go back to the slide, 80% of our expenses
I went to-
are fixed cost, where a lot of increases happen on those, okay? I just want to point that out. You can go back and look at the
Well,
slide.
I'm going back to some information I had from
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, ma'am.
So the original levy from the state would have been $407,015. $407,015.
What was-
407,015.
What was it last year, Laura? 470?
So the year before was 470,415.
I'm gonna make this comment. So it says 65%, yes, because we have to use the 40, what is it again, 7 this year?
407,015.
We have to use that figure, because that's the new levy, because the debt service is gone, the 70 or whatever thousand it is. In reality, it's approximately, what, 35–40% increase. Last year, we're at $2.06 per thousand now. We're asking to go to $2.73, and last year they were shooting for $2.72, I believe, correct? So it's really no different than what they were going for last year, except we're trying to maintain the township, take care of it.
Yes, Dick.
Dick Naybrook, W1466 South Shore Drive. Point of clarification. Road repairs and construction is not a fixed offense. It is a fixed expense. It's a budgeted expense and dealt with as needs be. It's not fixed.
I would agree with you. It's shown as a variable expense in this breakout. Highway construction is paving, chip sealing, crack filling.
Highway
This,
street maintenance is showing us a fixed expense of $230,000.
this is your ice and snow, this is your tree work, this is your cold patch, and this is your mowing expense, okay? Maintenance, construction. The maintenance, I agree with you, is different than construction costs.
Other questions, comments?
More a comment than a question. Winona Brassett, 12437 Brassett Lane, in the town of Elmira. And I point out you guys really have been busy and enthusiastic, because in 7 months, you've done stuff that no Elmira Town Board's done in the past 50 years. One thing, you've had 19 meetings in 7 months. You've been busy. One of the things that you've done that really bothers me is that at the June 12th board meeting, you passed a resolution 2023-001, giving any two of the three of you the authority to access and distribute town funds and bypass the treasurer, and both the tax account and the general fund account. And that really is a violation of the state statute, which vests that authority in the town treasurer. So, according to your resolution, any two of you can go to the bank and access the town funds without a signature or anything from the town treasurer. We talked about the fact that she might be, well, it was kind of a joke about her winning the lottery and then not.
Speak up, please.
But that's not legal for you guys to be doing that.
I'll make a comment on that. I've been to these WTA schools, and one of the first things, two of the head lawyers for the Wisconsin Town Association said, you can't just have two people on the checking account, so on and so forth. What if somebody had a heart attack? What if somebody died?
That's not what I'm saying, Frank. I'm saying the treasurer always has to be on there, and then any of the other three of you could be co-signatories. But what you did was pass a resolution saying that the treasurer doesn't need to be involved. That's not
what if
the same
something
thing.
happens to the treasurer?
Well, if something happens to the treasurer, then you're going to have to go to the state, to the Department of Revenue and get something done.
This was done as an emergency.
You
in case
can't.
Okay, you let you talk, may I finish? We did it in case of an emergency for the town. If the treasurer was unavailable or something happened to the treasurer, we could still conduct town business. But we will take your comment, we'll go back and we'll review it, and we'll see if we need to tighten something up.
In that case, the town treasurer can appoint a deputy. So you guys need to read the
I just said
statutes about this.
I just said we take it back and
You
consider
really
it.
need to.
We'll talk to our lawyers and we'll see where we need to go.
Okay, but do you understand that that creates a little bit of lack of confidence when you do things like this without even
It wasn't
looking at the
meant to, it was
statutes?
meant as an emergency situation. In fact, I would think it would get us more confidence because we could still conduct town business if an emergency happened.
But it's not legal.
And I just said we would go back
Okay,
and talk to our
good. Thank
lawyers
you.
and
Do
make
that.
sure if it wasn't legal, we'll correct it.
And I'm really concerned too about the fact that we have overspent the town budget, and if you go back and you look at the budget to actual for November 16th, there are a lot of overrides there, and the biggest one being that $70,000 for Hooper Road, which wasn't budgeted at all because there wasn't the money to budget it. So now, like Kathy said, you're running the risk of ending the year in the red. So that's never happened, at least in the last 50 years, and I look back as far as I could in archives to the town board. So I would ask that instead of asking for more money to raise the levy from the taxpayers, it'd make more sense to work within the 2024 mandated state budget, even if it means putting off road construction work for another year. Spend some time learning about the legal responsibilities of the town board members, and it's covered in chapter 60 of the 3 minutes.
3 minutes up.
As a town association, it applies to every town association. And this will also order, and then come back next year and ask for elections.
Nona, thank you for your comments. The 3 minutes are up. Appreciate the comments. Thank you.
Anybody else, folks? Go ahead.
Kathy Blazkowski, Tamarack Road. I was at the budget hearing last year, and we didn't get 1/10 of the information from the previous board that we have up here. There's a heck of a lot more transparency going on here. You can understand what they're talking about. People had questions that they couldn't even answer at last year's meeting. So that's why I voted no last year, because I didn't know what the heck they were talking about. We had no idea what was going on. These folks here put a lot of time and effort to explain this clearly, and to sit here and bash what they're doing, I find is rather appalling.
Thank you very much.
There was a hand in the back.
Hi, Suzanne, Tamarack Road. I'd like to know if both of them, neither of the measures passed, and you spent a year trying to operate within the budget, and you came back next year. Could you commit to not borrow money this year? Which I think we all agree is a bad idea.
I'm sorry, can you speak a little louder? I'm sorry, a little louder.
If neither of the measures were to pass tonight,
Right.
would you be willing to try to operate within the current budget, within the confines of that budget, and then simultaneously, would you commit not to borrow money this time around? Which I think we all agree is a bad idea.
So what you said is, if these
No, it
measures
isn't.
pass tonight,
Do not pass.
okay, all I can make this commitment, and that is to do the best that I can from the town of Palmyra residents and the upkeep of the township. That's what I'm committed to. Anybody else?
I would agree with Frank. We will, if the measures don't pass, that's a message from the constituency on how you want us to operate. And we'll go back and we'll look at all options, maybe borrowing money. We can't commit at this point to not borrow if it's not, but we will go back and see what cuts we can make. And then we do have to come back, if the budget isn't approved as well, we have to come back in a similar type meeting with a revised budget for approval, so.
I guess my input on that is, you tell us. I mean, ultimately, we have put together a budget that models payment as we go. If you don't want debt service, that's one answer. But if you don't want to fund roads at all, that's a completely different answer, right? So we have the mechanism to borrow money, but if you don't want to borrow money, does that also mean that you don't want to fund road work, or is it just that you don't want to borrow money? I mean, to me, that's a question that has not been directly addressed with a group of residents this size. Last year was, I'm gonna say 90% organized around Q&A on the fire and EMS contract. Road construction didn't come up because it wasn't proposed. So my point would be, what are you comfortable with? Do you wanna fund roads, yes or no? And if you do, when and how? That's why we're here. We're here to work for the residents of this community. And if you guys all want us to do road construction but not pay for it, that is something we're gonna have a hard time doing. But if you are open to different funding, let us know.
Dick?
Nate Victor, we 1466 South Shore Drive. Josh, you mentioned earlier, I think the word you used was there are several roads that are gone. Could you just tell us which roads those are?
So these would be a potential start. Mill Road, section of Mering Road, the remaining section of Hooper Road, west of Highway E, portion of Thayer Road, Bluebird Ridge, those are all not included. Year number 5, you could also look at B-Tense Lane, Lowland Road, sections of Marsh Road. There's a handful of these that are border roads between the town of Palmyra, potentially the town of LaGrange, potentially the town of Hebron, and all of those are roads that would have to be looked at some point in the future. report.
Diane Knauer, Blue Spring Lake Drive. I'm looking at the notice of the special town electric meeting, and I'm looking at item number 1, and it ends with a proposed tax levy which would exceed the allowable town tax levy for 2023 to be collected in 2024 before adjustments. I wonder what those adjustments would be. How does that affect this? Why is that included in it? Was it for?
It's language that the state requires you to have in the request for the levy increase. There's adjustments for personal property aid, which the town gets $340. I'm just looking here to see if there's another, I think the other piece might be the debt service that's being paid off. So for 2024, there's roughly $52,000 that's being paid off for the Little Third Road loan.
Oh,
So that's another adjustment.
Is that in the tax levy worksheet?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. I thought you meant adjustments to the dollar amount. I read
No,
it.
no, it's the adjustments to the dollar amount that you're starting with to determine what your total will be when you add the increase to it.
I'd also like to know for the town of Palmyra, how much land is DNR land that you don't get property taxes on? You get Pilgrim and conservation land, Canaan. You have quite a bit of DNR land, don't you? I don't know that off the top of my head.
We have to probably research that for you, ma'am. I'm sure.
Because that decreases, I mean, if that was residential land, your taxes would be a lot higher. The amount of money you receive for taxes would be higher.
Correct.
And they just took, the DNR took an additional piece of land out of the town of Easton, correct?
Oh, where?
Out of the town of Palmyra. What's the name of it? Wasn't. And I also would like to say, I like the second thing that says the presentation that we did was extremely helpful for residents, especially who haven't paid attention to tax bills, so kudos. I haven't seen that at other towns. There you go.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Shut her
One
down.
more time. Anybody else?
Can I come back up?
Call for the vote.
Can I ask more questions about March? About the March farm?
Can you stand up and? Thank you.
They still have a great big huge culvert in the ditch that's not buried. And I don't understand why you guys don't know anything about it.
I'm gonna check. With that. Josh will check on that.
They've been there I know that. Yeah, they've been there for over a week working.
So the
And they-
culvert's been there a week, or is that a lot longer?
Yes.
So it's a brand new culvert that's laying there?
Brand spanking new
Silver, the
culvert.
silver one, yeah, it's the original Tamarack laying in the ditch.
Yep.
I guess we'll have to check it out, but you would think we need to.
Plus they tore down that last building too.
Thank you for bringing it to our attention. We'll follow up.
God basically takes care of the highway stuff, so.
But I
I'll
tell
check
you
into that.
today, when I came into town again, it was beelining out of there.
Well, we'll check into it. Anybody else? Okay, anybody else? Okay, we will adjourn the budget hearing. Okay, we'll call the Town of Palmyra Notice of Special Town Electors Meeting, November 21st, 2023. Notice is hereby given of a special town meeting of electors of the Town of Palmyra on Tuesday, November 21st, 2023. The special town meeting will follow the completion of the public hearing of the 2024 proposed budget, which begins at 6 p.m. at the Palmyra Eagle High School Community Center, 123 Burr Oak Street, Palmyra, Wisconsin, 53156. This special town meeting of electors is called pursuant to section 60.12, paragraph 1, subsection C of Wisconsin statute by the town board for the following purpose. Number 1, to consider the adoption of the resolution 2023-008 by the electors at the town meeting endorsing a town board resolution 2023-007, which proposes that the town levy exceed the state allowable levy limit under Wisconsin statute 66.0602, specifically a proposed tax levy which would exceed the allowable town tax levy for 2023 to be collected in 2024 before adjustments by 65.706% for the dollar increase of $233,342. That's it.
You want me to read the actual?
Yes, I would say yes.
Okay, right, so this is the resolution you'll be voting on with your number 1 ballot.